Tony and Bookie had always been the couple that others admired. Their love was pure, strong, and seemed unbreakable. 4 years into their marriage, they were still young, vibrant, and deeply in love. They had made a mutual decision early on to wait 5 years before having children, wanting to savor every moment of their youth and enjoy each other's company without the responsibilities of parenthood. This plan had worked perfectly for them, and their marriage had been filled with laughter, love, and trust. However, that trust would soon be put to the test. One evening, after a hearty dinner, Tony found himself lounging on the couch, scrolling through his social media feed. As he aimlessly swiped, a video caught his attention. The title alone made him chuckle. Fear Women. It seemed like just another humorous take on relationships, something to laugh about and move on. But as he watched, the content took a darker turn. The video was filled with stories and warnings about how women could be unfaithful, how they couldn't be trusted unless tested. Tony shook his head, amused but unconvinced. My wife is different, he muttered to himself. Before he could move on, Tony made the mistake of diving into the comment section. There, he found countless stories from people who had trusted their wives only to discover they had been betrayed. Each comment seemed to echo the message of the video. Don't trust blindly, test her first. Then he commented that his wife can be trusted. Almost immediately, he began receiving several replies to his comments. Don't conclude yet until you test her, many replied. These replies began to play in his head like a song on repeat. At first, Tony shrugged it off. Bookie had never given him any reason to doubt her. She had always been loyal, loving, and faithful. Yet, as the night wore on, the seed of doubt that had been planted by the video and comments began to grow. What if the video was right? What if Bookie was only pretending to be the perfect wife? For days, Tony tried to shake off the thoughts, but they kept coming back, stronger each time. He began to see Bookie's actions in a new light. Her kindness, her obedience, her lack of arguments, all things he had once loved about her, now seemed suspicious. Could she really be that perfect? Or was she hiding something? Finally, after weeks of internal struggle, Tony decided to act. He shared his thoughts with his best friend Kelvin, hoping for support, but Kelvin's reaction wasn't what he expected. Tony, are you out of your mind? Kelvin exclaimed. You want to test your wife with another man? You're playing with fire. It's not a big deal, Tony insisted. I just want to be sure she's too good to be true. What if she's been pretending all this time? Kelvin shook his head. You're making a huge mistake. Don't do it. You will only end up destroying your marriage. But Tony was convinced. He believed Kelvin's advice came from a place of inexperience. After all, Kelvin was still single. So, Tony turned to other friends, and this time, he found the support he was looking for. They helped him plan the perfect test, convincing him that he was doing the right thing. Meanwhile, Bookie remained blissfully unaware of her husband's growing suspicions. She continued to live her life as usual, being the loving and faithful wife she had always been. Little did she know, her loyalty was about to be put to the ultimate test. Tony and his friends thought they had come up with the perfect plan. After weeks of deliberation, they finally decided to set the wheels in motion and put Bookie to the test. The first step was to have two of Tony's close friends make advances towards her, just to see how she would react. It began innocently enough. One of Tony's friends, Michael, started by casually complimenting Buki whenever they were around each other. "Buki, you're looking more beautiful every day," he would say with a sly smile. At first, Buki brushed it off as harmless banter, but then Michael began to get bolder. He started sending her flirty messages on her phone, hinting that he wanted more than just friendship. Buki, being the faithful wife she was, quickly put Michael in his place. "Michael, I respect you as my husband's friend, but this behavior is inappropriate," she firmly told him. When Michael persisted, she angrily reported the incident to Tony, hoping he would confront his friend. Tony, however, played the part of a concerned husband perfectly. He feigned shock and apologized profusely. "I'm so sorry, Buki. I will talk to him and make sure it doesn't happen again. I promise I won't associate with him anymore," Tony assured her, acting like he knew nothing about it. Buki, relieved that her husband was on her side, believed him. But Michael wasn't the only one who tried. Tony's other friend, Wale, also made his move. He tried to win Buki over with gifts, sending her expensive perfumes and jewelry. When she politely declined, he resorted to sweet words and constant attention. But Buki wasn't swayed. She firmly told Wale that she wasn't interested and that she loved her husband too much to betray him. Once again, Buki reported Wale to Tony, who repeated his act of innocence. "I'm so disappointed in Wale. I will make sure he stays away from you," Tony promised. And just like that, Buki was reassured, never suspecting that her husband was behind the entire ordeal. After both attempts by Tony's friends failed, they regrouped to discuss what had gone wrong. "She passed the test because she knows us too well," Wale reasoned. "She knew we were your friends, so she didn't take the bait." Tony nodded in agreement. "You're right. We need someone she doesn't know. Someone who can catch her off guard." And so the hunt began. Tony decided that the next man would be a complete stranger to Buki, someone she couldn't associate with him or his friends. That's when he met Dennis. Tony had found Dennis online. He was everything Tony believed could charm any woman: tall, handsome, charismatic, and smooth talking. They met at a restaurant and Tony explained the plan. Dennis, intrigued by the challenge and the promise of a good payout, agreed to help. They struck a deal. Dennis would seduce Buki and report back to Tony on her reactions. The game began with Dennis sending Buki a friend request on social media. At first, Buki was hesitant to accept, but Dennis was persistent. He started by liking and commenting on her post, making his presence known. Eventually, Buki accepted his request, and that's when their conversations began. Dennis was careful in his approach. He didn't come on too strong. Instead, he played it cool, starting with casual chats about harmless topics. But as days turned into weeks, their conversations grew deeper. Dennis showered Buki with attention, always available to listen to her and make her laugh. He knew exactly how to make a woman feel special, and soon Buki began to look forward to their chats. One day, Dennis suggested they meet in person. "You seem like such a great person, Buki. How about we hang out sometime? Just as friends, of course," he suggested casually. Buki hesitated but eventually agreed. After all, she didn't see any harm in meeting someone she considered just a friend. They met at a beautiful popular restaurant in town. Dennis was every bit as charming in person as he was online. They had a great time, laughing and talking as if they had known each other for years. As they walked out of the restaurant that night, Dennis decided to take the next step. Buki, I really enjoy spending time with you. You're such an amazing woman, he said, looking deep into her eyes. I know you're married, but I can't help how I feel. I want to be more than just friends. Buki smiled politely but shook her head. I'm sorry, Dennis. I enjoyed tonight too, but I came here on a friendship level. I am a married woman and I won't cheat on my husband. Dennis tried to convince her otherwise. He used every sweet word he knew, trying to break through her resolve. But Buki remained firm. I love my husband and I'm committed to him. I'm not interested in anything else, she repeated. For the next few months, Dennis refused to give up. He had initially agreed to the plan for the challenge and the money, but now he found himself genuinely drawn to Buki. He began to fall for her, and what had started as a game turned into something more. Dennis started putting in more effort, going above and beyond just to win her over. He sent her gifts, money, anything he could think of to get closer to her. But no matter what he did, Buki remained loyal to Tony, refusing to betray her marriage. Tony, unaware of Dennis' growing feelings, waited eagerly for the results of the test. He didn't realize that he had set in motion a plan that could spiral out of control. Again, their plans failed, but Tony wasn't satisfied. It was as if his goal was for Buki to fail the test. Frustrated yet determined, Tony gathered his friends once more to strategize on another approach to get her to sleep up. As they sat down to plan, one of Tony's friends, Tayo, had finally had enough. His irritation with the whole scheme had reached its peak, and he decided to speak up. Guy, your wife is a virtuous woman, Tayo said firmly, his voice filled with exasperation. Please, leave her and end this rubbish. Or is it until you destroy your home before you regain your senses? Tony, however, brushed off Tayo's advice with a wave of his hand. Tayo, chill. Just this last time. And then I'll be sure she can be trusted. Just this last one, guys. Tony insisted. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing in determination. I think we've made a mistake by not using her spec. Tayo, already irritated by the entire plan, warned him again. Tony, you are playing a dangerous game. You are testing the patience of a good woman and risking everything. Don't be foolish. But Tony refused to listen. His obsession with proving Buki's loyalty had clouded his judgment, and he was determined to go through with the plan one more time. They went ahead and made it happen. This time, they hired Tolu, a dark, handsome man who was exactly Buki's type. Tony was convinced that Tolu was the key to finally getting Buki to fail the test. He felt confident that they had found the right man this time. And so, the test began again. Tolu was everything Buki desired in a man. When he first reached out to her on social media, Buki's breath was taken away just by looking at his picture. His well-chiseled features, confident smile, and captivating eyes made her heart skip a beat. What sort of temptation is this? I rebuke this temptation, Buki screamed in frustration. She couldn't believe the sudden influx of attention from men. Come to think of it, why are guys coming around me these days? What's happening? Buki began to wonder why the sudden attraction and attention from men. She sensed that something must be strange and odd. The frequency of these advances was too coincidental to be normal. She suspected that something fishy was going on, but she decided to play along, curious to see where it would lead. To her surprise, she and Tolu got along quickly. There was an undeniable chemistry between them. Tolu was charming, attentive, and caring. trait that even surpassed Tony's. Buki began to enjoy every moment spent chatting with him. Their conversations flowed effortlessly and they discussed everything from their interests to their dreams. But when Tolu asked her to come over to his house, Buki drew the line. I'm a married woman, please. I shouldn't be seen in another man's house. She responded firmly. It's nothing. Now, I won't harm you or touch you. It's just a visit, Tolu insisted, trying to persuade her. At least, let's see each other for once. We've been talking online for months now. Despite his best efforts, Buki refused to visit his house or meet at a hotel. She remained steadfast in her commitment to her marriage. Buki had no intention of having an extramarital affair. To her, it was all just harmless fun, catching cruise as she called it. But Tolu's intention had changed. What started as a simple agreement with Tony had turned into something much more complicated. Slowly, Tolu began to fall deeply in love with Buki. He had discovered just how loving and sweet she was, and he started seeing her as more than just a test subject. He wanted her as his wife and was willing to do whatever it took to win her over. He couldn't believe Tony's foolishness in testing such a faithful woman. Whenever Tony asked for updates, Tolu would lie, telling him that Buki was on the verge of giving in and that he just needed a little more time to succeed. But the truth was, no matter how hard Tolu tried, Buki continued to resist him. She remained loyal to her husband, even though she had no idea that her husband was behind the entire charade. Yet, Tolu wasn't willing to give up. His feelings for Buki had grown too strong, and he was determined to make her his, regardless of the consequences. One day, Tolu lied to Tony, telling him that he would need to visit their home to meet Buki and that whatever happened during the visit would ultimately determine whether she failed the test or could be trusted. Tolu asked Tony for the home address and insisted that Tony should not be home at a given time. Trusting his plan, Tony agreed. That day, Buki heard a knock on her door. When she opened it, she was shocked to see Tolu standing there. What? Tolu, what are you doing here? And how did you get my address? She asked, her voice filled with surprise and unease. Tolu lied smoothly, claiming that he had tracked her number to get her location. I just wanted to see you, he said with a disarming smile. Can I come in? But Buki stood her ground. Sorry, this is my matrimonial home. I can't let you in. Please leave. Tolu, however, refused to go. He kept saying sweet words, pleading with her to let him in. After much persistence, Buki hesitantly gave in and allowed him inside the house. But once he was in, she felt uncomfortable. She tried everything to make him leave as soon as possible, but Tolu was too relaxed. He had a plan to execute, and he wasn't in a hurry. He engaged her in idle talk, trying to break down her defenses. After a while, he asked to use the restroom. The visitor's toilet in the sitting room wasn't working well, so Buki led him to the one inside the guest room. A few minutes later, Buki heard a loud scream from the guest room. Alarmed, she rushed in to check on Tolu, but when she ran into the room, she met the ugly scene that would change everything. As soon as she entered, Tolu, who had been hiding behind the door, quietly closed it and gently dragged her to the bed. He began speaking softly, trying to manipulate her emotions. Meanwhile, Tony had received a message from Tolu, claiming that Buki had fallen for his trap and that they were already in bed together. Furious, Tony rushed home, determined to confront his wife. He stormed into the guest room, expecting to find them in a compromising position. What he saw shattered him. There they were, Buki and Tolu, on the bed. His heart sank and his mind raced with betrayal. He felt utterly disappointed in his wife and concluded that women could never be trusted. Buki tried to explain that nothing had happened between them, that she had been caught off guard and was trying to push Tolu away. But Tony was too angry to listen. He sent Tolu out of his house and refused to speak to Buki. His heart was broken and his trust in her was shattered. Buki, still unaware of the test that had been orchestrated behind her back, was confused and devastated by her husband's cold treatment. She tried begging him, pleading for him to believe her, but Tony wouldn't listen. Desperate for answers, Buki picked up her phone to confront Tolu, only to see a long message he had left her. In the message, Tolu confessed everything. He revealed that Tony had paid him to test her loyalty, but in the process, he had genuinely fallen in love with her. He admitted that he had deliberately set up the scene for Tony to find them in bed, hoping it would cause a rift between them and give him a chance to be with her. I see now that your husband doesn't deserve you, Buki, Tolu wrote. He doesn't know what a gem he has. I want to be with you, please. Let's be together. Buki was livid. The betrayal from both Tony and Tolu cut deep. She confronted Tony, who, realizing that she knew the full truth, began to plead with her for forgiveness. His arrogance and need to control her had backfired in the worst possible way. But Buki was beyond reconciliation. She was hurt, disappointed, and couldn't bear to stay in a home where she had been so mistrusted and manipulated. She packed a few things and left the house, ignoring Tony's desperate calls and messages. For days, Tony tried to reach her, but Buki refused to respond. The damage had been done and she wasn't sure if their marriage could ever recover from this betrayal. Leave a word for Tony in the comment section. Kindly like this video and share it with your friends and family. We are also working so hard to bring you stories twice or thrice a week. So subscribe to enjoy all the stories. See you in the next video. Goodbye.